It's been a while, but we are back with another episode of Refute This. And we actually have, it's not through lack of ideas that we haven't brought you on, it's through laziness and recreation on my part. Yiska's the model student, and I'm just off on road trips and like not arranging things, not scheduling things properly. But you came up with a doozy for us here. We're hitting the people with the spice, Yiska. We've gone from the worst mid-season signings to just shitting on Florida Mayhem by the sounds of it. What's wrong with you these days?
Scorched earth, my friend, and I'm the napalm. I need to. I guess I need to let off some steam in that. But yeah, I don't know if it's actually that much of a negative topic in the sense that we can't say. But I mean, part of that topic is also saying that Sayaplayer is just that good, right?
True. That I'm sure that would be part of your argument as the person that's for it. But
Sure.
It's on me to tear down your structures that have been built and try and, I guess, prove that Alcatraz was a figment of his imagination all along. But go on then, give me just to set up the concept for people, because maybe somebody's never heard of the concept of roster jail. Seems unlikely, but what is your definition of roster jail and therefore the statement that you're going for here?
I guess the easiest way to explain that is that the discrepancy in skill between the best player on a team and the rest of the team, as well as the cohesion in the team and everything, is so wide that this guy is basically being held down in the sense of he could be playing on a much better team, for instance, but is locked in contract jail in that regard as well, because obviously he can't switch outside of the transfer window. And basically the premise of this is here that Sayaplayer, the skill of Sayaplayer is so high in comparison to the rest of his team that he could very easily be playing in a different team and is also being held back in terms of what he could achieve if everyone was as good as he is on his team.
So just to give some examples as well, who are people that we would say were in horrific roster jails in the past? I mean, Fleta instantly springs to mind, right?
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
he was
yes.
out in the yard like like beating everybody else up. He was the big man, but in the tiny little gang inside the jail.
I mean, that guy definitely has a couple of seasons of prison break under his belt.
Did he ever escape though? Did he ever escape?
I mean, not really, I guess. And the fun part is that even the one tournament he won with Lunatic High, and was it?
Yeah. The Soul
Epic
Cup.
Premier, right? Soul Cup? Was it Soul Cup?
Yeah.
He was actually not that good in that one, so it's kind of interesting. But yeah, definitely he is part of it. You would probably say, I mean, that's probably what you will bring up as a counter argument. But
don't try and preempt what I'm going to do. I'm wild. I'll come up with some weird ones.
All right, so I'll just say Dia for some part of the season was definitely one of those. Who else? Maybe you could argue Effect was part of that. So just people that are just much better than the rest of that.
It's like the hyper carries that are kept down by the rest of their team. Their potential isn't able. You can imagine them as if they're in a cage, right? It's like they're being caged in by the skill ceiling of the rest of their team. So why then do you think that Sayaplayer is the epitome of this? Why is Sayaplayer in the Alcatraz of roster jails? Why isn't he just the same as all these other guys?
Okay, so first off, there's two dynamics to this argument, right? The one is Sayaplayer is very, very, very good. It's a very good player that probably shouldn't be playing on this level of a team. And it's actually quite stunning to me that he only ended up on Florida Mayhem. And on the other side is that Florida Mayhem, obviously second worst team in standings in the Overwatch League, is overall, in terms of what the talent is in that roster, of the actual results, is so bad in comparison to him that I don't think there's a high discrepancy in skill for any other player in the Overwatch League. That's basically what you could say the argument here is. Yeah. So, do you want me to?
Which one are you starting with then? Are you gonna big up Sire or trash on Florida Mayhem?
I mean, let's start with bigging up Sayaplayer, right?
Okay. So the more difficult of the two.
The crazy part about all of this is that we are even talking about this is that apparently either Sayaplayer thought that this was his best option or that it was his only option. And to viewers of the Apex tournaments, Sayaplayer was definitely a name, right? A household name. So famously of Meta Athena, and probably always considered the best hit scan player in Korea for the longest time of his career. I think I've seen that argument made by Yongbong Tang. I've seen it made by other coaches. It's just that
Pure hit
initially,
scan, like Widow, McCree, these kind of things.
yes,
Soldier as well. The guy was incredible at, yeah.
yeah. I mean, he was mostly known for soldiers because that was the meta back then. Obviously, very crisp tracking. Not too aggressive, but I mean, marvelous what he could do. And then it was very strange. I mean, I know Monty was talking about him and bigging him up, but like his skill set then also, I mean, there's a difference between tracking and hit scan in the sense of flick shots or whatever, and he seemed to be able to deliver there as well. And I would argue, in terms of raw aim, he probably, can I think of a better one? I think he has better raw aim than Pine, for instance. I think he has better raw aim than, who's a very good aimer in the Overwatch League? Is there like,
I think Fleder's actually got really good at just smooth kind of tracking aim when he does that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
AKM has excellent aim as well.
Yeah.
Those movement can occasionally suffer.
I mean, if we're thinking of aim, not necessarily in the Overwatch League, but you'd probably have to name Defran, who's a sick aimer. I mean, crazy good, especially in tracking. I mean, yeah, and I also think on top of that, it's not just that he's only aim. He also seems to be able to position quite well. The only thing that I think wasn't working as well was his communication in terms of how the team played around him, because I think the win rate he has is lower than they have with Logics, which makes sense, right? If you're coming into a new unit and you can't really communicate with your team or get information, especially because Widowmaker is now so positionally important. I think he had a little bit of a problem there. That would probably go away once he was on a Korean team, I would think, or once he gets some more proficiency in the English language. But overall, I think it's very easy to say for me that he's a top 5, if not top 3 Widowmaker player in the Overwatch League.
Yeah, I mean, I would even be willing to grant you that he might be the best Widowmaker in the Overwatch League. I think that he's up there alongside like maybe Carpe, and who else has had consistent performances all season long since they've been playing? I mean, Fleder had his times where he dropped off, actually, wasn't that great. Pine's had occasions where he has. Yeah, Linkser I don't think is particularly in it for me. Maybe guys like, actually, Sebiobi ended up being a very competent Widowmaker just by the end, but he didn't play too much of it, and I don't know how much his team helped him. I think Sayaplayer may be the best Widowmaker in the Overwatch League. I'd be happy to give you that. But the thing when I look at Sayaplayer is, and the reason I don't see him as like an obvious pickup for a lot of these OWL teams coming into it, is that he didn't really. So the way that most teams were constructed at the beginning of the league and then kind of halfway through was that you would have your flex DPS that had to be able to handle like your Widowmaker, your Genji, and then a range of other smaller things if you want to throw them onto like, for example, the Pharah, or you want to run them on the McCree or something. And your other guy, or the Hanzo, these kind of things. And your other guy was predominantly Tracer. And then that shifted as we went into stages 3 and 4. But I think the part of the reason that Sayaplayer's win rate is actually lower when you look at the Florida Mayhem is that I don't think it's necessarily cohesion. I think that his hero pool is such that you have to pair him with incredibly specific, really, really flexible people, like a Libero, for example, to get the best out of him. Because he doesn't play the kind of default heroes that well. His Tracer isn't great. His Genji, I don't think even exists. But his Widow is so fantastic. You end up getting locked in this weird, kind of like I guess like a baby bay situation or like an AKM situation with him, where the rest of the team really has to piece their shit around Sayaplayer, and it can work. But we've also seen on the Florida Mayhem they would hit like he would literally kill half the team, and the rest of his team isn't positioned to be able to take control of that. You need like a really specific team for Sayaplayer to be incredible and reach his full potential. In some sense, would not every roster be a bit of a ceiling for him because you can't just play like that on Widow all the time. The guy has been given a gun that if you point it at someone, kills them in one hit. Like, of course he's going to look better when he plays Widowmaker than most other players do on any hero. That's just the clutch power of Widowmaker, and he happens to be really good at it. I think to then overrate him as a player and say that he is, say he's the best Widow in the league, he's certainly not the best player in the league. I don't think he would come in the top
No,
10
probably
players
not.
in the league as well. So
Maybe for the length of this season. It's also a part where we think, like when we discuss Sayaplayer, it's obviously the players that we think he's worse than is probably also because they didn't they played much more than Sayaplayer did. We don't know what would happen if Sayaplayer would have played an entire season, to be fair, right?
yeah,
But
true.
at the same time, I think it's not even that normal to have. Like, who in the Overwatch League actually plays Tracer and Widowmaker, which is probably the best pairing of the ones if you had to choose two. Like, there's Carpe, there's Sebiobi,
Birdring.
okay, yeah, Birdring.
Let me work down them. So Sabiobi, I mean Libero played it in the past, but you wouldn't normally consider him a Tracer player, so I don't think that really counts. Then Soon for LA Valiant. The thing with the Overwatch League is every fucking time someone brings this up, I have to run through the teams in my head. I can't just spout them off, despite the fact that I've done so much shit.
I'm confident in saying that Sayaplayer's Tracer and Widow combined is better than Soon's Tracer and Widow combined.
But then I think, again, you're massively overrating the Widowmaker component of that, because Soon's actually a pretty capable Widowmaker, and I think he's a much better Tracer.
I mean, I just gotta ask my boy Sabiobi what he thinks about that, especially in the current meta.
Okay.
Because it's apparently a one-on-one game now, where he says that
other people that have the Tracer Widow pairing are Munchkin. When I look at the Soul Dynasty,
yeah,
Munchkin's
come on,
Munchkin
he's a trash can. Like, the thing is, okay, here's the thing, right? There was a specific point in time where I remember, I think it was on Gibraltar. I forgot who they were playing against. And they tried some strategy with Flat Out on Tracer and Munchkin on Widow. And at some point, you just see, like, Flatta's face just deforming, going like, boy, you were so bad at this video game. Switch off. And it's like, yeah, but Master, I have 80% ult charge. And
it was Widow Brigitte, but yeah.
Was it Widow Brigitte? Yeah.
Brigitte.
It's like, no, this kid is not good at Widow. He's pretty okay on Tracer.
He's all right. Another guy, Striker, who by the end of the season was actually playing a competent Widowmaker and was playing a fucking great Tracer the entire time.
No, that's true, yeah.
It's like Linkser is like the baby Sayaplayer in that kind of situation, I guess, because his Tracer's just like... You would only play him when you have to, but that's the same with Sayaplayer, man. You would only play Sire on Tracer when you have to. Of the three players that are in the Florida Mayhem, Sayaplayer is the last choice Tracer.
I'm actually not sure if his Tracer is actually that bad. I mean, yes, it's definitely worse than Logic's, but it's also because Logic's is pretty good Tracer. I would think slightly above average in the Overwatch League. That is just to say that Tracer's nuts in terms of talent in the Overwatch League, but yeah, I don't think. I mean, we haven't seen too much of it, but I know that it wasn't really, rated lowly in Korea before.
It was kind of average, I think. The Sayaplayer isn't a great Tracer, but he's not a terrible Tracer. You wouldn't. Like, the reason that they put Tvik on it, for example, is just because you want somebody that can play a lot of different stuff to pair alongside Saya, who you're going to put on Widow the entire time. It's not necessarily that Sayaplayer's Tracer is worse than Tvik's. I think Saya is probably a bit better than Tvik's. I don't think... I mean, Tvik hasn't had a great season on anything, honestly, but there we go.
I mean, if I'm being fair, I give you definitely the versatility argument, because if I think, for instance, would I say Sayaplayer has been a better player than Soon in the Overwatch League? Probably not, man. Like, Soon has a lot of off picks that can really surprise you. I remember even in the Rogue days, he somehow had a Junkrat that was nuts.
Yeah.
And his Junkrat now is actually also pretty good and probably underrated. And I don't know. I could, for instance, trust him to pick up a Hanzo. I wouldn't think that's a unrealistic task for a guy like him. He seems very talented and also having different heroes than that. I mean, I would definitely trust Sayaplayer to have a Zarya, which is also pretty, important in the meta that he was playing in mostly. So I don't know. I think as a solid aimer, you always have at least like 3 or 4 picks. Like McCree comes to mind. Soldier, yes, it's pretty problematic that over the time of the Overwatch League, that didn't seem to weigh as much as it could.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that this wasn't the case for Stage 4 or maybe right now or definitely in the future, depending on what the patches will look like.
True. You'd have to pair him up with somebody else that was kind of would be able to fill those holes in. But let me hit you with some counter picks then for guys that I think may be in worse roster jails than Sayaplayer. Because they've shown that they can do things, but they've quite literally been dragged down by their team, I think, in some of these situations. So, I mean, the obvious one, the one that you predicted at the beginning, has got to be Fletter as well, right? Because coming into the season, this was the guy that was like, okay, he's been in the maximum security roster jail. There can be no worse jail than being on Flash Lux when you are able to get a full half of their kills. You have... Hello?
No, I muted myself in order to activate my light.
Special abilities.
Yes.
Yeah, your light. Yeah, so, but I think my joke before about Fleder not really leaving roster jail, I think still carries on, because the guy is a phenomenal talent, I think, and you can see glimpses of it at times. And Seoul Dynasty has been so uncoordinated, and yet they've still been able to string together bits and bobs and still find wins through, I don't even know, just through sheer individual talent at times coming out from either their DPS, or they've been able to string together a fight it looks like they shouldn't have, but the pieces have not been working well. And this was a bigger slump from their previous form than the Florida Mayhems was, you know? The downwards tilt of Misfits throughout the course of the Overwatch League has... Yes, it's been horrifically disappointing, and there was no upside to it. In that sense, awful. But the Seoul Dynasty's got to be the biggest tragedy of the league.
Sure, but they still almost made playoffs, while Florida Mayhem tried to get double-digit wins in the Overwatch League over 40 games. I don't think they succeeded either. So,
and if you were going to pick up one of these two players for a potential team, say like a potential South Korean team for like a World Cup or something, who would you go with? You'd go with Fleder every time.
Of course, but if I say to you, I will shoot you in the case of a loss, which team or which core do you pick? The one of Florida Mayhem or the one of Seoul Dynasty?
Okay.
You basically have to sacrifice your life in order to win that argument.
That's true, but I think for me, Fleder is more... How do you phrase this? The distance between Fleta and Saya is more than the distance between Seoul and Florida. Seoul and Florida, you know, right now at the end of the season, they're both pretty tragic, but Fleta still looks really solid. Sayaplayer is really good, but only on one pick. I mean, what's going on there?
Oh, that's my phone going off, but at least I don't have to send out. That's pretty good.
You get a phone call from the South Korean team to ask your opinion why Sayaplayer wasn't on the team and Fleta was.
Don't turn around. Yeah, no, but I think there's okay, Fleta might be a better player than Sayaplayer, but Florida Mayhem is insurmountably worse than what Seoul has to offer. Needless to say that the talent level on that roster is probably also not as bad as coaching made it out to be. I mean, if we're saying roster jail, if I want to be very nitpicky, technically, I guess coaches aren't part of a roster. So
that's true.
So I think their problem comes from coaching and their inability to make their main tanks work. I think technically, in terms of skill, for instance, Zumba is still a great off tank.
Zumba's still been playing very well.
I mean, Jaehyung it's hard to judge him at the moment, but he's probably at least an average player in the Overwatch League, as is Toby or Gambler. And then if you have either of the other DPS, so Wicked or what's the last guy? Munchkin, of course.
Yeah.
I think their talent level is also like incomparable to okay, that's actually one of the positions where I would say that I would probably also give the benefit of the doubt to Tivik because of his past, and I wonder
You'd
what
give the
he
benefit
has
of the doubt to Tvik over Munchkin and Wakid?
in terms of what he could do in if he was to not only have to play around bad players otherwise.
I'm trying to take a look at your glasses and see whether they got a rose tint to them. I don't think they do. I don't think those are nostalgic
Are
glasses.
we just arguing right now the point of the other?
We are.
Person?
We've gone the wrong way. We've gone the wrong way. Okay, so I hit you with a team that was better, right? I hit you with a team that was better than the Florida Mayhem that has a better player in it. But I agree with you, really, that the gap between the Florida Mayhem are so utterly trashed here that if you perform well and you still look like you're doing real well, even though he plays a very individualistic hero, and that's got to help. But now I'm gonna sink. I'm gonna sink down to the level of the Florida Mayhem. I'm not gonna go below them yet. I'm just gonna sink down to the level. I've got a medium tier pick here, which would be Effect from the Dallas Fuel, because the guy at the beginning of the season, he plays a style a little bit like. I mean, it's not really like Sayaplayer, actually, but it's more individual. So he still has a role where if he's playing well, he can still shine even when he's on a shit team, which is the same as Sayaplayer, right? If Sayaplayer was playing Mercy and he was the best Mercy in the league, we wouldn't be saying this guy's in roster jail, because you wouldn't be able to tell, because he'd just be getting rolled over all the time because it's such a team-based hero. But with Widowmaker, you can stand out. You can really still make your impact known, even though you're not performing or even though the rest of your team is not performing. So I think Effect in this case, or at least at the beginning of the season when he was actually playing, had a similar kind of system where you could still tell this guy was incredibly good, but I think he wasn't playing well with the team as well. But if he found a team that he was playing well with, this guy is a talent.
I mean, he definitely has talent. I won't deny that. I think his idea of Tracer can no longer hold up. And I wonder how he would play if he was actually to be put in a position where he plays more with a team. And I mean, his aim would probably still hold up. That's probably fair. His ability to duel would probably, I think, work in a sense. But would he look as dominant is the question, right? And let's not forget, this guy was on his way out. You know, how do you exit like a jail? You go into the sewers, right? And like try to get out of there. And Effect just goes, you know what? I actually don't want to leave this. Like, these sewers are very comfortable. Let's just go to these Korean sewers. Stay here. Like, I've no. The guy left the team twice, right? Twice he went back to Korea and didn't play. Yeah, I think didn't you go back in stage 2, was it?
Is that where the meme came that was like going back to Korea just to smash Unreal Respect, brother? Is that one? That's possibly my favorite little quote of the entirety of the Overwatch League. I gotta try and find that one now. Unreal Respect, brother, was just so good. Yeah, it was. Let's see. Flew back to Korea mid-stage just to smash. Unreal Respect, brother. This is fantastic.
And let's not forget the most successful part of the season, and I'm making a little bit of a disingenuous argument here, but the most successful part of the season for the Dallas Fuel was without Effect. And yes. I don't think it comes down to only the meta being turned towards them and away from Tracer.
No, I think also it's a mentality thing and a coaching thing, which, maybe it helped that Effect wasn't there and you got a fresh start, but also you don't know whether they would have actually been better with Effect or whether they'd have been just the same and chose not to run Effect. He was at that point taken out of the pool of variables. It wasn't like they got to even test him. They don't know how good they would have been or how bad they could have been in that situation.
And keep in mind, in a sense, the Effect problem, so the thing we said about Sayaplayer having a problematic champion pool, that only isn't a problem for Effect because Tracer was played 80% of the time before.
I disagree here, though, because I think Effect, whenever he's had an opportunity to pick up another hero, has destroyed at it. This guy seems to have some just natural gaming talent. Huh?
Like what?
Or when he picked up
Okay, I give
Doomfist
you
at the
McCree.
beginning, he was really good at it. His McCree is really good as well. He picked up Widowmaker and was actually really good at that as well. We haven't seen him play
Was he
Genji too
that
much.
good though?
Yeah, his Widowmaker was no, his Widowmaker wasn't like Sayaplayer level good, but his Widowmaker
Yeah.
was easily I say easily like Sabiorbi, but in my head it was a little bit like Sabiorbi, where the guy picked it up and instantly it was just like, okay, this guy just has like aim, he has talent, he can play it. I don't think he actually was Sabiorbi good, but also he didn't have a team that was Sabiorbi good, so difficult to tell. But he just seemed to be one of those Tracer players that is able to pick up a huge range of other heroes, because the skill cap, I think, of Tracer is high enough that if you get good at that hero and you have the all-round talent, you can probably pick up a lot else. His Zarya is incredible as well. He's easily the best Zarya player on Dallas. I think overall effects in not just a roster jail, effects like in a rehab center where he deliberately doesn't want to be there. He doesn't think that he needs to be there, and the rehab center is like actually really corrupt and isn't even helping the people that are in there anyway. It's just a spiral of destruction from both ends. But it's not so much a jail, because he is actively putting himself in there and like fucking it up even worse.
Yeah.
He's the angry dude in the jail that just keeps having more and more years added to his sentence. But
Yeah.
I do think he is up there, and I think that in terms of if I was going to pick a player from one of these low-level teams and bet on them to be really successful in a top-level team, it would be Effect for me, I think. Because we've seen him have massive success before on well-functioning teams, and assuming you could find either a team that controlled him and the coaches told him what to do, or just one that he meshed with, this guy would pound.
Which team was he on where he worked well? In other than Envious, I suppose, where he was able to do whatever he wanted and just outlet.
I mean, he was only really playing at the top when he was playing in Envious, so I think that's the only.
I think it's a hard tell that Lunatic High once passed on him, and that I think he was a substitute player for Meta Athena, and he never saw play. I wonder if there's a problem with him slotting into team play, basically. It's
maybe.
It could just be that he doesn't play well with others. And I remember there was a segment on the broadcast where I think Bedosen, Fisher, and Effect sit there, and he's like, "Yeah, I think my style doesn't work anymore. I think I have to play more with my tank." When was this recorded? I asked myself. Like, how is this not an epiphany you had basically in 2017? Like,
yeah, a lot of the bad teams were still going through that same epiphany. But I mean, is that not down to the coaches? Should the players be forced to have these epiphanies? And also, from everything that I've seen of Effect, he does just seem like a really fucking determined guy that's like, really just wants to win all the time, and he will do what he needs to win. And that's about like forming the putty of that into the right mold.
Effect had the sickest walkout of the season against Shanghai.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He came out and just fucking willed it, dude.
He did.
He did. By the power of will, yeah.
So then the other examples I'm going to give are obviously, we're going to go the opposite way to the ones that I've done before. The previous examples have been better teams, but what I would consider better players than Sayaplayer. Now I'm going to go the other way. So I'm going to go, there cannot be any roster jail. Like, if you, the Alcatraz of roster jails, this is the fucking, I've actually forgotten the word. What's the one in Harry Potter where there's literal demons sucking your soul out of you? Azkaban. It's very similar to Alcatraz. And this is the Shanghai Dragons, is Azkaban, because the Dementors are, I mean, instantly my mind went to something else there. But the Dementors are keeping you in jail, sucking the soul out of you, making sure you go 0-40. It's the worst of all worlds. There cannot be a worse roster jail. So then, with that side of the argument, absolutely, just incontrovertibly locked down.
No, it's the worst roster, yes.
Absolutely. All you have to do is find a player that has similar talent or similar potential to Sayaplayer. And if you could do that, they would easily be the player that was in the worst position. Now, there isn't a direct player that you would be able to say has the same talent as Sayaplayer, but I would argue that they have had such a shit season. How could we ever expect somebody to display any of that skill? And the players that are that good aren't their Widow players. So in my opinion, it would be Ado would be my choice for the guy on the Shanghai Dragons that I think is in the biggest roster jail out of the guys on the Shanghai Dragons. Apart from possibly Fearless, but he actually looked worse on this team, which may be a stylistic thing, maybe because Tank is so wrapped up in your team play. But Fearless went from being on like a actually great team and performing really well alongside Dako and Element Mystic to having a not a terrible season individually, because it wasn't just like he was feeding constantly, but he didn't have a good season. He didn't make himself look good. It wasn't like he was making the best of the poor system that the Shanghai Dragons had implemented. But what can you do there? So my pick though would be Ado, because we have genuinely seen flashes of brilliance from this guy on a team that struggles to get what was it, 35% fight win rate percentage. On a team that struggles to get 35% and occasionally gets it up to 40, he's still coming out with big plays, big Dragon Blades that can't be shut down by the enemy team, despite the fact that he doesn't really have a system around him, being able to play a couple of really nice niche heroes, being able to pick up the Tracer, although not to a great degree, but the potential this guy has exhibited on such an abominably shit team makes me think that maybe he is in the worst roster jail.
See, the reason I was for Sayaplayer being that is because when I think of Shanghai Dragons, there are for me 3 players on Shanghai I could make the same case of. I think for Fearless you could make the same case of, and you could definitely also make the same case for Dia. And then if you want, you can even make the case for Gregory, right? So I think if you have 4 of those where you could at least give it a shake, then it's pretty problematic to say that this roster was underskilled. It was more like, okay, what's the social aspects in terms of language and whatever? Can your coaches at least bring you water, or do they fall down and it's all over the floor and now you short circuit to a PC, right? Like how competent is your staff, right?
Okay.
I mean, we could say you could be on the Shanghai Dragon roster because you destroy electronic devices with
I do
water
with
on the regular, right?
That's true. That's true. And I kind of speak English, so that about matches everybody else.
It's great. Yeah. So I think that my problem really is that there were standout performances from other people than Ado. Especially Dia had some pretty good games, I would think. And for instance, if I was to say, okay, Shanghai Dragons should be a Chinese team next season, then my roster building starts with Dia. I think that's a given. Also, Fearless, obviously, like in terms of in comparison, right? I think Fearless had the better career than Ado, for instance. So he's probably also, I mean, Ado is sick. The problem is, in comparison, his role is more stacked in terms of individual skill, I think. I think it's very hard to get a tank on the level that we at least used to see from Fearless. And obviously, tank play also deteriorates with bad comms or bad teammates around you.
Yeah.
Especially a back line. And that back line, Jesus, like, they were the guys basically mopping up the border. That was their practice room activity. No, but that's the problem I have, that you could make this same argument for more people than just Ado.
So coming back to what you were talking about there, with it being about Ado being able to shine on the hero that he plays compared to Fearless, I think this is the only argument for Dia, is that the guy was playing big impact heroes. The rest of the time, I wouldn't say that he deserves a better team than a bottom 3 team in the Overwatch League. I think that when you consider the range of talent that's throughout the Overwatch League, is he really an average player in the Overwatch League, as in like a mid-table player on that role? I don't think he really is. I think he had a couple of good games on like Widowmaker, where if you click heads, you get results, and that's the easiest way of seeing somebody have an individual performance. And I think that also, like, the thing that a lot of these players have in common is that we're talking about Widowmaker players being trapped on like shit teams.
Yes.
And I think that's because Widowmaker has not only been really powerful, but it's incredibly individual focused and has a massive impact if you can hit your shots. Basically, you don't really
Hmm.
need the rest of your team to be playing around you, which is what was impressive to me about Ado, is because he plays heroes that you have to get up in their face to actually make shit work, and you have to have great timing. Not just you have to be stood in the right place and hit your shots. You have to actually be thinking about their abilities, thinking about who could punish you. You have to go in at the right time. You need you need some semblance of being able to coordinate stuff with your team as well, like picking the right timings based on where your team is. Um, and the argument about fearless, though, I think falls down when you consider that every positive we would have about this guy was before the Overwatch League.
Sure.
That's why I struggle to make the argument for Fearless now, even though I loved watching him on Element Mystic, and I really do think the guy has talent. But I do have to go back to that period of his career to make arguments for him having a better team in the future. I can't use this present period in terms of any data to be able to support the fact that he's a good tank,
Mm.
because he's just not been playing well. But you have to say that almost all of that, I think, is because of the fact that he's on such a shit team. I don't think that's his fault, but there is no positive data that I can draw from the Overwatch League for Fearless to say that he would be in roster jail right now. I think
Mm.
it's still true, but I would have to go back before the Overwatch League to provide evidence for it. Whereas with Ado, I can really see it before and now, and that leads me to believe in the future he would be good.
Sure. The thing is that, and it's crazy to think about this, right? But have we seen Ado play anything but Genji and Tracer?
He played Pharah for them as well,
Okay.
and he played. I want to say Junkrat. I think he was their Junkrat player as well. Let me see if I can look it up.
Yeah, but because like that hero pool, other than Junkrat and the occasional Pharah, is now actually not as important, right? Like the play rate of his picks is basically like maybe at 35% combined or something. Like Pharah 5%, Tracer 20%, Genji 10%, and then Junkrat. Okay, but he wasn't shining as Junkrat. At least I don't remember any performances of his that was like sick on Junkrat.
No, he just played an alright Junkrat. He did actually pick up Brigitte later on as well into the season. I'm just
Hmm.
looking it up now. I forgot about Brigitte. But the guy is pretty consistently playing like 5 heroes a match. He actually picks up the Widowmaker whenever Dia is on the Tracer and they need one as well, so they feel flexible around that. I wouldn't say that he's excellent on Widow though.
I will say though, I think from what I've seen in terms of Contender's career, I'm actually not that hyped about Ado at all anymore. There's probably at least 5 people better in terms of potential, unactualized potential than Ado, just in Contender's career, what I've seen. Like, Addison is nuts, Tune is nuts, the occasional. Okay, so if you want to stay on that role, Bazzi, hmm. I mean, that's probably more. But the
Sparkle's
names.
been banned.
Oh yeah, okay. Sparkle would be better, definitely. Sparkle is definitely a better player than Ado, I would think.
But
Guard
yeah,
is
I know what you
one
mean,
of
but
them.
that's kind of in my head that's muddying the entire argument, because of course
Sure.
Contender's career is always going to produce ridiculous talent over and over again, and so you
Look at him trying to get like the argument we had before out here. Like, Contenders' career is going to rival the Overwatch League. It's
yeah,
like,
don't worry
all
about it.
right,
Don't worry about it.
getting
Uh,
him in for the sum up episodes. Like,
Listen, all I'm waiting for is this big open tournament in the off season, and then you'll see. Then you'll see.
I mean, we're all waiting for that. Make it happen in the backyard with like
Yeah,
Bren
yeah.
organizing it or something.
A genius idea. Genius. Yes, we'll fly them all out on Bren's dime. I think that would possibly
Can
work.
stream it on a phone. That's apparently a professional production value now.
Yes. Well,
Ever since
I don't
USA
have a
stream.
phone. I don't have a phone, so I
Oh,
wouldn't know.
that's true. Yeah,
Wouldn't be able to.
that's
Wouldn't be
actually
able to say.
worse.
Wouldn't be able to say. Okay, so if Sayaplayer, to close it out, if Sayaplayer is in the Alcatraz of roster jails right now, who would you put him into when he is freed? Say you are paying his bail and you are freeing him from jail and you are going to slot him into another team. Who does he slot into to be able to fulfill his potential and not be in a roster jail anymore?
Okay, so the easiest or the realistic answer first will be that it's probably that he probably won't be on a roster next season that we know of. I think that he's probably one of the premier agents in terms of
expansion.
The expansion teams, exactly. So if I think about slotting them in, definitely London, for instance. I mean, Bergering had a couple of struggles. Sayaplayer always bangs on Widow. If you need to bang Widow performance, like NYXL uses Pine.
Yeah.
So it's that would definitely work, especially on certain maps where you know the Widow playtime will be at 100%.
Yeah.
That would instantly also turn me a lot more like optimistic towards playoffs if he was on that roster, for instance. Now, who else? Well, even though Shofo has been playing pretty well, I think you could make an argument there and bring Shofo on for flexibility more.
I'm not so sure about that though as well, because I think the roles that Sayaplayer would slot into have to be times where you're looking for this third DPS player that fills in the McCree and the Widow and stuff like that. Gladiators and Valiant both play a very flexible game, I think, where they enjoy people switching and swapping in terms of each map. So I don't know whether he'd really fit in either of those, but London's
Here we
definitely
go.
a shout.
Right, like Los Angeles Valiant. We're talking about that they don't have any like hard carry or superstar potential right there. You have him right there, right? This is a guy that can take over games. And okay, we don't know what Widowmaker will look like next season, but I can definitely see, if that is still viable, that he could just be the X factor in these playoff series that you want to be. And honestly, like the guy reliably peaks in terms of his performances, what we've seen. I think he's the Widowmaker player that most reliably gets these sick plays. If we were to look at like the play time of him and the amount of multi-kills he gets, multi-kills per minute would probably be the best in the league, I would think. So Valiant would be interesting, especially if a coach like Moon can help him develop more of his champion pool. Maybe get the Tracer in there, for instance. Boston is lacking a dedicated Widowmaker player, and especially in situations like, let's be real, if we wake up in the playoffs and suddenly Tracer Widowmaker is the way to go, Boston is completely done for. Like Mistakes can neither play top 6 as it is in the playoffs, top 6 Widowmaker or Tracer.
Tracer
right?
Widow was the meta that they went undefeated on for 14 matches.
Sure, but
with Mistakes playing Widow. Striker's just that good.
Yes, that's basically the reason behind that. I never put it really on Mistakes too much. Also, keep in mind, I'm not sure. I would have to look it up, but it feels like they actually didn't play that much of that comp during that time. They were still playing a bunch of dive. I think Mistakes. No, Striker was also playing the Junkrat for them, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I think that was definitely help, though. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that it would be a massive upgrade in terms of Widow-only maps when you put in Sayaplayer over Mistakes.
Yeah, but all of these examples, and I think in this current patch, in the late stages of the Overwatch League, they all have merit, especially the London one. I think the London one was just a no-brainer actually at the end of this Overwatch League. But the final thing that keeps coming up again and again is on Widow-only maps. Is Sayaplayer just a patch player? Would we even be having this discussion if it hadn't been Widow-centric for the entire league?
I mean, right there, if for instance, okay, so maybe Widowmaker is phased out, maybe gets to McCree. I definitely have him as a top player there. What about Soldier? Definitely also up there, right? I don't think you can ever completely invalidate hit scan other than in dive matters with Genji Tracer. And yes, the fact that he isn't a top tier tracer is problematic a little bit for his superstar quality. And if he wants to be a superstar, and as at least historically how Overwatch has been played for like 1.5 years, I think in order to become that, he would need to pick up a godlike tracer. But yeah, that's basically his limitation. At the same time, like, I can only fault players so much for focusing on the dominant pick that actually can solo carry, right?
Yeah.
Why would you not do it then? It's the same thing. How I don't blame tracer players now that they don't have a wide champion pool. They were able to play that thing 90% of the time for most of the competitive playtime of Overwatch. So yeah, I think I was actually very surprised how good Sayaplayer was when he came, because like people that were watching Apex mostly knew him from Soldier. And as I said in the beginning of the episode, yeah, I was like, is he actually, we know he has pretty good aim, but is he actually going to be, he really blew me out of the water, much like Architect did, by the way, in terms of that he was able to play a Widowmaker like that. So if you if you can find more picks in this guy, which he has demonstrated by showcasing that Widowmaker, which wasn't his staple pick, which he was known for in Korea, then I think you can also get it out of him on other picks. Also possibly picks that we will see. I think there's still one more hero at least, or two, till season 2, whatever that might be. Maybe that's something that
can he play Wrecking Ball? That's the important thing. Does your hero pool extend to playing a ball?
I would trust him to be on when you're on a shooting range and he says pull and I throw a hamster. I trust him to hit that one.
That's how you imagine the Florida Mayhem train him, with a real rifle, chucking hamsters into the air, see if he can hit them. That sounds like a hell of a time. Get me round to those Florida Mayhem barbecues.
Don't sue us, Peter.